Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today we'll be diving into a fascinating and complex topic, free will and determinism. We'll explore the debate on whether our actions are truly chosen freely or if they are shaped by factors beyond our control. This discussion touches on human behavior, philosophy, and the forces that influence our decisions. I'm excited to take you through the key ideas and perspectives surrounding this issue. Let's get started. On this slide, we dive into the foundational concepts of free will and determinism. First, we look at free will, which is all about the ability to make choices independently, without being controlled by external forces. The icon of a hand pointing up beside it symbolizes that sense of personal agency. Next, we examine determinism, the idea that every event is caused by prior factors, which can limit or even eliminate real choice. This is represented by the gear icon, highlighting the mechanical or causal chain behind events. Finally, we consider why this debate matters across various fields, from philosophy to science and law, symbolized by the balance scale. Understanding these ideas helps us grasp how we think about responsibility, choices, and the nature of human action. The detailed image of the engine assembly visually underscores the complexity and interconnectedness of these concepts, much like the intricate parts of a machine working together. Here, we're defining free will in human behavior by breaking it down into three key components. First, conscious deliberation refers to our ability to reflect and carefully weigh different options before making a decision. This shows how free will involves thoughtful consideration rather than impulsive reaction. Next, intentional action highlights that the choices we make are purposeful and stem from our own decisions, not random or accidental. Finally, moral responsibility emphasizes that individuals are accountable for their choices, precisely because those choices are autonomous. Together, these elements help us understand how free will shapes human behavior. The accompanying image of a young woman pausing thoughtfully in a beautiful field symbolizes this moment of reflection and decision-making. On this slide, we're focusing on three key concepts to help us understand determinism. First, causal chains. This means that behavior is the result of a series of prior causes, linked together like a chain of events. Essentially, every action can be traced back through a sequence of influences. Next, environmental causes highlight how external factors in an individual's surroundings shape their behavior and decisions. Things like upbringing, social context, and cultural influences play a crucial role here. Finally, biological causes point to the internal physiological and genetic factors that affect how we behave. Our genetics and bodily processes contribute significantly to our actions. You can see these ideas represented visually by the icons, a link for causal chains, a globe for environmental causes, and a DNA strand for biological causes. The image of the hand stopping the dominoes illustrates how these factors interact and sometimes intervene in the flow of behavior. Together, these concepts give us a well-rounded perspective on how determinism operates. Here we see a horizontal bar chart representing the spectrum of philosophical positions on free will. On the y-axis, we have the three main stances: hard determinism, compatibilism, and libertarian free will. The x-axis measures their presence or prominence on this spectrum. What's important to understand is that these positions reflect different views on whether and how free will can exist. Hard determinism holds that free will is an illusion because every action is determined by prior causes. Compatibilism, on the other hand, argues that free will can coexist with determinism, meaning we can still be considered free in a determined world. Lastly, libertarian free will posits that we have genuine, undetermined freedom to make choices. This spectrum helps us see these ideas not as isolated beliefs, but as points along a continuum concerning control and causation. Behaviorism views behavior as primarily shaped by the environment and an individual's history of reinforcement, suggesting people have very limited personal autonomy in their actions. Key evidence for this comes from classic conditioning experiments, which clearly show predictable cause and effect relationships between stimuli and observable responses. This perspective emphasizes that behavior follows lawful patterns influenced by external factors, rather than internal thoughts or intentions. Here we explore the fundamental concepts of psychoanalysis and how the unconscious mind plays a critical role. First, unconscious motives are key drivers of our behavior. These are deep-seated drives and early experiences that operate beneath our conscious awareness, shaping our patterns without us realizing it. Next, determinist pressures come into play. These are repressed drives that create internal tensions, limiting our ability to make fully conscious choices and often leading to repetitive behavioral patterns. Finally, therapeutic change offers a path forward. By gaining insight into these unconscious factors through therapy, individuals can unlock new choices and develop greater self-awareness, allowing for meaningful personal growth. The image here, with its contemplative head silhouette against a vibrant sunset, symbolizes the inner journey of reflection and discovery that psychoanalysis encourages. Here, we're focusing on some key concepts within humanistic psychology, which really emphasizes freedom and choice. Self-actualization is about reaching your full potential, becoming the best version of yourself. Agency refers to your ability to make conscious choices and exercise personal freedom in your life. Then there's meaning-making, which is all about creating a sense of purpose and significance in what you do. For example, someone might decide to change careers not just for a job, but to follow a passion that feels more aligned with their values and who they truly want to be. These ideas together highlight the importance of personal growth and autonomy in this approach. Here we explore the interaction of choice and constraint through the lens of cognitive psychology. First, internal processes play a crucial role. Our behavior is shaped by mental representations, like beliefs and goals, which guide how we process information internally. Moving on to decision dynamics, this involves how our beliefs, context, and goals combine over time, influencing the strength and direction of our decisions. Finally, heuristics and biases come into play. These are common mental shortcuts and biases that shape our decisions, especially within the limitations or constraints of a situation we face. Together, these elements illustrate the complex ways our mind navigates choices amid various constraints. Here we have a look at hard determinism, which is the idea that all human actions are the direct and necessary outcomes of prior causes. Essentially, this means that everything we do is tied to a chain of events and conditions that came before. The concept of causal necessity plays a central role here. Every single event, including our decisions, is inevitably linked to what happened previously. This perspective raises important questions about moral responsibility, because if our actions are predetermined by prior events, it challenges the idea that we have true freedom to choose. The image of these mechanical gears and pulleys reminds us of how interconnected and predetermined processes can be, much like the way hard determinism views human behavior. Philosophical libertarianism centers on the idea that individuals have genuine free will, meaning our choices are not predetermined by prior events. This perspective emphasizes that we are truly responsible for our actions because we can make real, undetermined decisions. For instance, imagine deciding between two equally attractive career options. Libertarianism argues that this choice isn't fixed by past causes, but is freely made by the individual. This belief underlines moral responsibility, affirming that our freedom to choose is authentic and meaningful. The image of the seagulls soaring freely captures this spirit of open choice and autonomy perfectly. Here we explore compatibilism, which aims to reconcile freedom with determinism. First, let's consider internal freedom. This concept defines freedom not as the absence of determinism, but rather through internal states, meaning freedom is about having no external constraints that undermine our decisions. Moving on to responsibility, compatibilism holds that moral responsibility is preserved because our actions reflect our own internal motivations and reasoning processes. Finally, the practical consequences emphasize that this view allows us to hold people accountable for their actions, while still recognizing that determinism influences behavior. The image here symbolizes connection, reminding us that despite deterministic factors, our internal freedom and responsibility create meaningful interactions. When we look at genetic and neurobiological influences, research shows that our brain states and biological makeup play a crucial role in shaping our behavior and the decisions we make. This points to a strong biological foundation behind many of our actions. However, interpreting these findings isn't straightforward. Determining if these neural influences fully eliminate the concept of free will is still a topic of ongoing debate. The challenge lies in the complexity of brain data and the limitations of experimental methods, which make it difficult to draw definitive conclusions about determinism from neuroscience alone. This balance between biology and free will is a critical area of exploration. Here we see empirical evidence that supports determinism in behavior, illustrated through a bar chart. On the x-axis, we have three key categories: conditioning studies, predictive neural signals, and genetic correlations. The y-axis shows the relative strength of empirical support in percentage terms. Conditioning studies lead with the strongest support at 85%, indicating that learned behaviors through conditioned responses strongly back the deterministic view. Predictive neural signals come next at 70%, reflecting how brain activity can anticipate behaviors, suggesting a biological underpinning. Lastly, genetic correlations hold a significant 55%, showing that genetic factors also contribute to predictable behavior patterns. Together, these findings provide robust, multifaceted support for the idea that behavior is shaped by deterministic factors rather than random choice. Here we explore key arguments and evidence supporting the concepts of free will and autonomy. First, the phenomenology of agency highlights that people commonly feel a genuine sense of intentional control over their actions. This reflects a direct, subjective awareness of making choices, which is fundamental to how we understand free will. Moving on, self-regulation successes demonstrate individuals' ability to set goals and follow through with deliberate planning and effortful control. This shows that our actions are not just automatic reactions, but often involve purposeful decision-making. Finally, social deliberation emphasizes that decision-making frequently happens in a social context, involving thoughtful consideration of different options alongside others. Together, these points provide a comprehensive picture of how free will and autonomy are supported by both our experiences and behaviors. Here we explore the real-world implications of how we understand ethics and responsibility. First, from an ethical perspective, our ideas about freedom deeply influence how we assign moral praise or blame. If we see people as having true freedom, we might hold them more accountable for their actions. Moving on to the legal side, the concept of determinism versus free will plays a crucial role in legal accountability. Depending on these beliefs, the law may treat responsibility and punishment differently. Finally, when it comes to policymaking, social policies need to take into account how free will influences rehabilitation and prevention strategies. Understanding these connections helps us craft policies that are fair and effective. The image of the balance scale with question marks perfectly symbolizes this ongoing challenge of weighing uncertainty and responsibility in our decisions. Here we're looking at some important limitations and critiques commonly found in theoretical frameworks. First, there are methodological limits. Many frameworks struggle with research design and data collection, which can impact how valid their conclusions really are. Next, we have overreach. Sometimes, theories claim to apply more broadly than the evidence actually supports, which can lead to oversimplified or misleading interpretations. Then, there's conceptual ambiguities. Definitions and key concepts aren't always clearly or consistently used across different studies, making it hard to compare findings or build on prior work effectively. Finally, interdisciplinary gaps highlight that connections between different fields are often underexplored, preventing a truly comprehensive understanding of complex issues. This image of the ledger and magnifying glass nicely symbolizes the need to look closely at these details and ensure thorough analysis. Here we see a clear breakdown of how different academic fields contribute to the ongoing discussion about freedom and determinism. Philosophy leads with the largest share, contributing 40%, which makes sense given its foundational role in exploring these concepts. Psychology follows closely with 35%, highlighting how human behavior and mental processes are critical to understanding freedom and constraint. Neuroscience rounds out the picture at 25%, reflecting the increasing importance of brain research in explaining the mechanisms underlying our choices. This distribution shows that while philosophy sets the stage, the empirical insights from psychology and neuroscience are essential to fully grasp the balance between freedom and determinism.